As far as groups of superpowered individuals go, few have quite the mortality rate than the Suicide Squad. Over the years, a whole assortment of costume crooks have joined the team only to be slaughtered by something in one mission or another, varying from just being shot to being killed by exploding kids or something equally wild. Now, since the Suicide Squad's trailer appears to show that the sequel is taking this death-filled approach to the upcoming film, an important question almost immediately comes out: who will live and who will die? And with the cast of the film containing some truly obscure figures from the corners of comic history, it can prove difficult to try and figure out who has the best chances and who invariably has the worst. But let's have a gamble, shall we? Because if I'm right, then that means, hey, we've already proved something that we all know, that you should definitely trust me at all costs. And if I'm wrong, well, forget about it. I'm wrong about a lot of things. So with that in mind, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and this is Who Will Die in the Suicide Squad. Number 16, Polkadot Man. While it's natural that people want Polkadot Man to somehow prove useful and become an integral part of the team, chances are he's going to die, and he's going to die absolutely brutally. Though many likely wondered why on earth the likes of Polkadot Man have made it into this iteration of the squad, it makes perfect sense. These characters will definitely not be in other projects and won't have limitations placed on them by DC because the company needs figures like Superman and Doomsday to look like legitimate threats. As such, if Polkadot Man doesn't explode in a shower of gore and gristle before the film even gets going, many of us will be very, very surprised. Number 15, Javelin. If we don't get to see javelins used for frankly barbaric purposes throughout the Suicide Squad, it will basically be a crime. And that is the one thing that could legitimately prevent Javelin from a painfully early demise. That said, it's clear that many of the squad are going to die in this one, and aside from a hilarious actor and sweet violence potential, Javelin isn't exactly bringing much more to the table, which likely means his fate is already sealed. Number 14, Blackguard. Blackguard had an especially interesting run with an old iteration of the Suicide Squad, a part of a team that Waller had made explicitly for getting rid of malignant entities. Richard Hertz was tasked with destroying a company that were attempting to craft a weaponized virus. Unfortunately for Blackguard, he was not the only one sent, but rather part of a team that turned on him and beheaded him, which unsurprisingly was his end. With this in mind, the odds are that there's going to be a similarly gory beheading taking place in this film, or they may have picked this character to make us think that this is going to happen for a satisfying double twist, like the joke being that he's always going to die, but doesn't. Number 13, Peacemaker. When John Cena was announced that he was going to play a role in the Suicide Squad, two very real and very wonderful possibilities emerged. Number 1, John Cena would become an integral part of the DC universe as the douchey Captain America figure that he was about to popularize, or number 2, that he would die within the first 5 minutes after making us believe that the first option was ever going to happen. It is a real 50-50 scenario as to which is going to occur, but much like we can't see Cena in the ring, we won't be able to predict which is more likely until the film itself is actually out. Number 12, Mongal. Sometimes in a film, all you want to see, even if for one brief shining moment, is a ripped-as-hell alien overlord beat down some unfortunate opponents. For the course of the Suicide Squad sequel, we can but presume that Mongal will be providing us with these moments in no short supply. While she's obviously much more powerful than the likes of Ratcatcher or Polkadot Man, there's still a potential of something killing Mongal off, given that she has died in the comics. However, in the comics, she was killed by someone of similar power in the form of her brother Mongal the Younger, so we'd need a really heavy hitter to appear for her to have a worthy death. Number 11, Savant. Brian Derlin is the absolute worst. He's a discount Batman with none of the morality, to the extent that he was explicitly told to quit being a vigilante by none other than the Dark Knight himself, on account of the fact that he felt that Derlin cared for absolutely nobody but himself. Bitter at this, Savant turned to crime, which in his original run actually led to a bizarre redemption of sorts, but in the reboot would lead to him being made part of the Suicide Squad instead. Given the Suicide Squad comics have Savant die when he tries to betray the team during their training, he's a prime candidate for being one of the first to go. Number 10, Weasel. Despite looking like a discount monster from a B-list budget horror movie, Weasel could, and I can't believe I'm saying this, be a genuinely integral addition to the Suicide Squad roster. After all, while we have an assortment of rogues and ne'er-do-wells, this selection contains very few unsettling entities. However, none of these characters scream, "I have no idea what this villain could possibly do," quite as well as Weasel, and that's why there's actually a very good chance that this will carry him through alive until the end of the whole shebang. Number 9. Ratcatcher 2. Now, since canonically in this film universe the original Ratcatcher, Otis Flanagan, is already dead, the chances of his successor also kicking the bucket seem pretty considerable. That said, now that James Gunn has given himself the possibility of keeping a character who has trained rats to do tasks, it seems like it would be very difficult to let that kind of potential go. Number 8. The Thinker. Peter Capaldi is playing one of the slightly more elusive villain roles that DC could have offered him, given that there have been roughly 4 different criminals who have taken on the alias of the Thinker over the years. However, only one of these dudes has wires coming out of his goddamn head, and thus we can presume that the former Doctor will be playing the new 52 iteration of the character. This is actually especially interesting because this Thinker is most well known for having pretended to be Amanda Waller in order to create another rival Suicide Squad. If this happens, his days are definitely numbered because nobody crosses Amanda Waller and gets away with it. Number 7. TDK. The mysterious figure known as TDK has perhaps the most unpredictable chances of all of the squad in terms of whether he will live or die, given that we don't exactly know what's up with his character yet, since nobody in the DC roster runs under the alias of TDK, unless you want to say the Dark Knight does, but it seems fairly clear that he's not going to be a weird green Batman. Popular speculation is that Nathan Fillion's current role stands for the Detachable Kid, a theory supported by the fact that the character's logo features what appears to be 2 detached arms crossed in defiance. This would make TDK an offshoot of the infamous Arm Fall Off Boy, which is such a weird and surreal character that it would simply be a crime not to have him around for the entire movie. Number 6. Solsoria. Now, Solsoria is an especially interesting character for the film because she doesn't actually exist, at least she doesn't in the comics anyway, which likely means that Alice Braga's character plays an important role in the film, or that she's a way to put another female character into the roster without using the likes of Vixen or Killer Frost, who seem a little bit too powerful to fit in with the rest of the current team. However, if fan theories are correct, then she's just a lady version of Juan Soria, a man who wanted to be in the Justice League with his new ability to unlock everything, but who ultimately ended up being in the Suicide Squad instead. Now, Juan Soria lasted a whole 2 issues in the 5th volume of the Suicide Squad, but here's hoping that Solsoria maybe lasts a little longer than that. Number 5. Bloodsport. Bloodsport is one of the few characters who isn't a main staple of the comic Suicide Squad who still has a pretty good chance of living, if only on the basis that Idris Elba is playing the role and fully deserves another bout in the limelight. But just being a good actor isn't enough to cement Bloodsport's status as safe from death. The fact that he appears to be a sort of stand-in for Deadshot suggests that he will at least be one of the last to die, if nothing else. Number 4. King Shark. Let's just get this out of the way right now. If King Shark dies, we riot. Having said that, it's not impossible for this character to face demise in the film, given that he appears to have been characterized in a much sweeter, much more endearing form than we have usually seen from him in the comics. As such, he's either going to be a precious mascot that is killed off by the bad guys to make us bay for their blood, or main invulnerability is the sweet and kind terror of the depths that now has a permanent spot on the team for potential future endeavors. Number 3. Captain Boomerang. Now, Captain Boomerang isn't exactly a surefire candidate to 100% survive the whole film, but the odds are stacked in his favour as the lovable, if very gross, comedy heart of the franchise. Indeed, the only way that old Boomer has a chance of going out is if this film rehashes the plot of his death in the comics at the hands, or rather laser eyes, of General Zod. And Digger is brought back again after that, meaning that there's actually a possibility that the same kind of thing will take place on the big screens too, only for him to return again in a later adventure. Number 2. Rick Flagg. As the leader of the proverbial pack, Rick Flagg is one of the least likely in the team to die, since he's sort of the glue holding them all together and mostly stopping them from turning on each other instead of their targets. Despite being a regular human surrounded by a bunch of super-powered tanks, Rick has fared incredibly well throughout his run in the Suicide Squad, with only 1 death to his name, and that was in the face of a nuclear explosion. And even then he ends up having escaped because clearly Rick Flagg is this next level of Bear Grylls-esque survival tactician. And number 1, Harley Quinn. It would be a downright lie to suggest that Harley is going to die in the newest film. She is popular enough that she's practically immortal now, at least in the same sort of way that Batman is, where you can break your spine still but always eventually come out on top. So you know what? Yes, this is a big thumbs up for me saying she's gonna live. And there we go, my friends. That was who will die in the Suicide Squad. What do you think of my predictions? Let me know down in the comments section below who you think is going to live and who you think is going to die. And you know what? For bonus points, why not put in how they're going to die as well? Because we might come back to this and see who was right and who was wrong. That being said, if you do want to chat to me further about all things to do with comic books, films, TV, anything else, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.